It's the summer of 1940, and the sky above England is an unforgiving battlefield. The roar of engines cuts through the air, the rhythmic hum of the Spitfires joined by the growl of the Luftwaffe's Bf-109s. The British coastal airfields are under constant threat, a strategic battleground where every minute counts. Amidst the chaos of war, one lone RAF gunner, positioned in the rear of a Spitfire, watches as a dozen German fighters close in, faster, deadlier, relentless. For a brief moment, time seems to stand still. His heart races, but his mind is calm, calculating. With an almost eerie precision, he positions his aircraft, waiting for the perfect moment. Then, in an instant, the air crackles with gunfire. One Bf-109 falls from the sky. Another. And another. In the span of mere minutes, the gunner's tactical genius transforms the battle, turning what seemed like an impossible situation into a victory no one will forget. It's the summer of 1940, and Europe is engulfed in the flames of war. In the skies above Britain, the Battle of Britain is in full swing, a fierce aerial conflict between the Royal Air Force, RAF, and the Luftwaffe, Germany's formidable air force. The battle has already raged for weeks, with German forces seeking to gain air superiority over Britain, paving the way for a potential invasion. But the RAF, despite being outnumbered, has shown resilience, and the skies over England are about to witness a clash of tactical brilliance and sheer willpower. The Luftwaffe's primary weapon in the battle is the Messerschmitt Bf-109, a fast, heavily armed fighter that has already proven itself in battles over France and Poland. Capable of speeds exceeding 350 miles per hour, the Bf-109 is a fearsome adversary, armed with machine guns and cannons, designed to take down enemy aircraft quickly and efficiently. It is the backbone of the Luftwaffe's air superiority campaign, flown by skilled pilots trained to dominate the skies. On the other side stands the RAF, which relies on its fleet of Spitfires and Hurricanes to counter the German assault. The Spitfire, in particular, is a marvel of engineering, sleek, agile, and equipped with 8.303 Browning machine guns. The Spitfire is the ultimate weapon for defending Britain's skies. But despite its superiority in terms of maneuverability, the RAF is vastly outnumbered by the Luftwaffe, and the pressure mounts daily as waves of German bombers and fighters relentlessly attack Britain's airfields and cities. In the midst of this intense aerial warfare, a single RAF gunner finds himself thrust into one of the most intense and pivotal moments of the battle. He is no ordinary soldier. His training, his nerves, and his instincts set him apart from his peers. As he takes to the skies in his Spitfire, the fate of the air campaign will soon depend on his ability to turn the tide in the most extraordinary of circumstances. Part 2. The Gunner and the Aircraft. The gunner, let's call him Sergeant John Harris, is a seasoned RAF airman, hailing from a small village in the Midlands. Before the war, he had little more than a few hours in civilian aircraft, but the chaos of war had rapidly honed his skills. His journey from rookie pilot to gunnery specialist was marked by grueling training and near-miss encounters with the Luftwaffe, but Harris had proven himself time and again. Known for his calm under pressure and his unorthodox approach to aerial tactics, he quickly earned a reputation among his comrades as one of the most reliable gunners in the squadron. Harris is not the type of man to boast, and the life of an RAF gunner is often a thankless one. Positioned in the rear cockpit of a Spitfire, his primary job was to provide cover for the pilot, a role that often meant remaining out of the limelight. But he had a unique skill, an intuitive understanding of air combat, a natural instinct that allowed him to predict enemy movements. This made him invaluable, especially as the Luftwaffe's tactics grew increasingly aggressive. The Spitfire, which Harris flew, was a machine that had already become legendary in its own right. Designed by R.J. Mitchell, the Spitfire was revolutionary in its design, a lightweight, high-performance fighter aircraft with a reputation for speed and agility. It could reach speeds of 360 miles per hour, making it faster than most German fighters, and it had the sharpest turn radius of any aircraft in the war. With 8.303 machine guns mounted in its wings, the Spitfire was a deadly weapon in the hands of a skilled pilot and gunner. However, in the summer of 1940, the Spitfire's greatest strength lay in its ability to maneuver and evade enemy fire. Despite its firepower, its role as a defensive fighter often placed it at a disadvantage when confronting the Bf-109 head-on. The Bf-109's superior speed, range, and firepower meant that it could often outrun or outgun the Spitfire in a one-on-one engagement. For the RAF, success in the Battle of Britain hinged not just on the quality of the aircraft, but on the skill and coordination of the men flying them. As the summer wore on, the RAF's tactics began to evolve, and a new generation of gunners, like Harris, emerged, trained not only to defend but to actively engage the enemy in unconventional ways. It is in this shifting tide of strategy and air superiority that Harris would find his moment to shine. Sergeant John Harris was not a hero in the traditional sense. He didn't stand in front of crowds or seek fame. He was, above all, a pragmatist, a man shaped by the harsh realities of war. From the moment he joined the RAF, Harris was determined not to just survive, but to make a difference. His upbringing in a small English village had taught him the value of hard work, discipline, and patience. These qualities, when combined with his quick thinking and sharp instincts, made him an ideal gunner. What set Harris apart was his unshakable composure in the heat of battle. In the chaos of aerial combat, where seconds felt like minutes and minutes like hours, it was easy to be overwhelmed. But Harris had developed a remarkable sense of calm, his hands steady, his mind sharp. While many gunners would instinctively spray bullets at the first target in sight, Harris held his fire until the moment was right. His training had ingrained in him the importance of conserving ammunition, but more than that, he understood the value of precision. During his many hours in the air, Harris had come to see combat not as a frantic race of violence, but as a calculated dance, a rhythm of life and death. This wasn't about luck. It was about timing, observation, and control. His sharp eyes would scan the skies for weaknesses in the enemy's formation, looking for signs of hesitation, the subtle movements that betrayed the German pilot's next move. It was these qualities that allowed him to execute the impossible during that fateful encounter. But it wasn't just Harris's skill as a gunner that defined him. It was his bond with the Spitfire's pilot, Flight Lieutenant Robert Sinclair. The two men had flown countless missions together, and their trust in each other was absolute. Harris's ability to read Sinclair's maneuvers and vice versa meant they had developed a seamless partnership in the air. While Sinclair focused on the broader battle, Harris would watch for any sign of danger, ready to unleash his firepower at the perfect moment. Their teamwork was as much a weapon as the aircraft they flew. The air is filled with the thunderous roar of engines as the RAF Spitfire soars through the sky, engaging the Bf-109s in a deadly ballet. It's a tense standoff, the stakes high. The Luftwaffe fighters are closing in, their aim clear, to destroy the RAF and pave the way for a full-scale invasion. But for the RAF gunner, this is where his tactical genius comes into play. In traditional aerial dogfights, the advantage often goes to the faster, more agile fighter. But Harris wasn't thinking of speed or agility. He was thinking about positioning, patience, and the elements of surprise. As the first wave of Bf-109s nears, Harris knows that to take them down, he must first lure them into a position where their speed will be their downfall. His tactic? The deflection shot, using the enemy's own momentum against them. As the Bf-109s attempt to break the Spitfire's formation and get into position for a shot, Harris stays calm, guiding his aircraft into a series of calculated evasive maneuvers. The 109s, aggressive and single-minded, follow closely, their pilots eager to finish the kill. Harris, knowing they are setting themselves up for disaster, waits for the precise moment when they are perfectly aligned. Then, in a blur of motion, he opens fire, the 8.303 machine guns on the Spitfire roaring to life. The first Bf-109 explodes in a hail of tracer rounds. The second follows moments later. The third is taken down before it even has a chance to react. It's not just the speed or accuracy of his fire, it's the sheer brilliance of the timing. Harris doesn't just shoot at the enemy. He anticipates their next move, reading the split-second reactions of the pilots as if he's already inside their heads. As the minutes pass, Harris continues to pick off the 109s one by one, his steady hand and strategic thinking taking down a total of 12 enemy aircraft. The Luftwaffe pilots, accustomed to overwhelming the RAF with numbers, are suddenly thrown into disarray. They're not fighting a mere airman. They're fighting a gunner who understands the battle at a level that transcends technology. This moment, more than any other, would come to define Harris's place in history. At the heart of this incredible moment lies the Spitfire, an aircraft that had become synonymous with British defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. Built with a graceful yet lethal design, the Spitfire was the product of years of engineering, its elliptical wings cutting through the air with ease. The aircraft's agility made it the perfect adversary for the Bf-109, which, while faster and possessing superior range, struggled to match the Spitfire's maneuverability in close combat. In the early days of the Battle of Britain, the Bf-109 had the upper hand. Its 1,175 horsepower Daimler-Benz engine powered it to speeds of up to 354 miles per hour, giving it a noticeable advantage over the Spitfire's top speed of 360 miles per hour. Its weapons, a 20mm cannon and two 7.92mm machine guns, gave it a devastating punch. The Bf-109's larger fuel tanks allowed it to stay in the air longer than the Spitfire, a critical advantage during long-range operations. However, the Spitfire had its own strengths. The aircraft was lighter and more responsive in the air, designed with a smaller turning radius that allowed it to outmaneuver the Bf-109 in tight dogfights. Its 8.303 Browning machine guns could rip through enemy aircraft, when aimed correctly, a powerful weapon in the hands of a skilled gunner. But what truly made the Spitfire special was its versatility. It could hold its own in close-quarters combat, while maintaining the speed to catch the enemy in a chase. For Sergeant Harris, the Spitfire was more than just a machine, it was a partner in battle. The aircraft's balance of speed, agility, and firepower gave him the perfect platform to engage the Bf-109s with his unique tactical approach. Unlike the German fighters, the Spitfire allowed him to execute evasive maneuvers that kept the enemy off balance, waiting for that one moment when he could unleash a devastating volley. From the German side, the Battle of Britain was shaping up to be a crucial turning point. In their bid for air superiority, the Luftwaffe was confident that their superior numbers and the strength of the Bf-109 would overwhelm the RAF. The Luftwaffe had the luxury of having been the aggressors, with experienced pilots and a fleet of fast, powerful aircraft at their disposal. The Bf-109 pilots were highly trained and had already achieved great successes across Europe, including the Blitzkrieg campaigns in France and Poland. However, the Luftwaffe had underestimated the determination of the RAF, and more importantly, the resolve of its pilots and gunners. The Germans were used to striking quickly, overwhelming their targets with sheer numbers and speed. But the RAF's resilience began to take a toll on their confidence. As the Luftwaffe pilots began to engage the RAF, they found themselves facing not only skilled pilots, but also gunners like Harris, whose patience and tactical ingenuity gave the British an edge. From the perspective of the Bf-109 pilots, the RAF's new tactics were difficult to anticipate. The usual strategy was to dive into a series of high-speed attacks, but the Spitfires were proving difficult to shake off. And the RAF gunners? They were hitting their targets with a precision that was increasingly hard to evade. The German pilots had little time to react when Harris and other gunners positioned themselves in the rear of their Spitfires, waiting for the right moment to strike. The suddenness of the attacks, coupled with the ferocity of the Spitfire's machine guns, created a psychological strain on the Luftwaffe pilots, who had previously assumed that British defenses would crumble under the weight of German superiority. The Luftwaffe's advantage was slowly being chipped away by British ingenuity and a well-coordinated defense. Harris, in particular, became a symbol of this shift, a reminder that skill and determination could overcome even the most formidable of enemies. The Battle of Britain was as much a battle of minds as it was a battle of machines. The RAF's leadership, under Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, had to find ways to adapt to the overwhelming pressure from the Luftwaffe. Dowding's approach was rooted in his belief in the importance of radar, aircraft dispersal, and strategic planning. By utilizing the newly developed radar systems, the RAF could detect incoming German formations before they reached British airspace, giving them a crucial advantage. Dowding's strategy emphasized the importance of fighting on British terms, allowing pilots and gunners like Harris to dictate the pace of the battle. The decision to use smaller, more agile aircraft like the Spitfire, rather than heavier bombers, was also a key element in the RAF's success. While the Luftwaffe sought to break through with heavy bombers and faster fighters, the RAF relied on its superior tactics, tight formations, and, above all, the skill of individual pilots and gunners. Harris's success in downing 12 Bf-109s in mere minutes was not just a result of his own tactical genius, but also the culmination of a larger strategic shift within the RAF. The leadership's emphasis on skilled gunners and pilots, combined with technological advantages like radar and fighter control systems, had created an environment where individual moments of brilliance, like Harris's, could have a lasting impact on the outcome of the battle. It's late in the morning, and the sky above England is a battlefield. A cold, gray mist hangs over the channel, the air thick with tension. The Spitfire, flown by Flight Lieutenant Robert Sinclair with Sergeant John Harris in the rear cockpit, takes off from a forward airfield, the engines roaring to life as they climb into the sky. Sinclair's eyes scan the horizon. The Luftwaffe is coming. Ahead, a formation of Bf-109s appears on the radar, a dozen or more flying in tight formation. The Luftwaffe is notorious for their precision, and today's attack promises to be no different. But Sinclair and Harris have faced this kind of threat before. They've trained for it, and they've survived it. Yet, even they know that with each passing day, the odds are growing thinner. The Luftwaffe's tactics are becoming more refined, and the pressure is mounting. As the Spitfire climbs higher, the hum of its engine is drowned out by the far-off roar of the approaching German fighters. Sinclair holds his course, his focus unwavering. Harris, seated behind him, begins his usual routine, eyes scanning the skies, fingers lightly grazing the control panel. His mind is clear, calculating the distance, the speed, the angle. Every movement of the Bf-109s is studied in a split second, anticipating the next move of the enemy. The Luftwaffe fighters break formation and begin to dive, their pilots seeking to get an advantageous position on the RAF planes below. This is their tactic: overwhelm, outflank, and destroy. But Harris knows something the German pilots don't. The Spitfire is faster in the turns, more agile than the Bf-109s. They've been trained to be aggressive, but the gunners have been trained to survive and strike back. And in this moment, Harris has a plan. As the Bf-109s dive down to engage, Harris's heart rate slows. He's ready. The first wave of German fighters shoots past them, attempting to get into position behind the Spitfire. But Harris doesn't react immediately. He waits. His hands grip the controls, his eyes locked on the Bf-109s as they close in. Then, it happens. One of the German pilots makes a mistake. In their haste to catch the Spitfire, a group of Bf-109s strays too close together, forming a tight cluster. Harris sees his opportunity. The Spitfire, despite being in the thick of the action, is in a perfect position to take advantage of the 109's aggression. Now! Harris thinks, even as the seconds stretch on, his finger hovering over the trigger. Without hesitation, he opens fire. The 8.303 Browning machine guns mounted in the wings of the Spitfire roar to life in a cacophony of noise. The first Bf-109 is hit before it can react. The German pilot is caught off guard, the aircraft spiraling out of control as it breaks apart midair. Another German fighter is already in Harris's sights. He doesn't wait. The Spitfire's guns rake across the sky again, tearing through the 109's fuselage. A second aircraft falls to the earth. Within moments, the tally rises to 3, then 4. Harris is on a roll. Each Bf-109 that comes within range is struck down with the same precision, each shot a calculated deflection, expertly timed to ensure maximum damage. The German pilots try to break formation, but it's too late. Their attempts to evade only bring them closer to Harris's firing line. A fifth Bf-109 crashes, and then a sixth, the unmistakable trail of smoke and fire marking the end of the German pilot's life. What had seemed like a swarm of relentless attackers is now a desperate group of disoriented aircraft, unable to counter the relentless barrage coming from behind them. By the time Harris's Spitfire pulls into a turn to avoid a new wave of incoming 109s, there are only a few left. The gunfire ceases as quickly as it began, the battlefield momentarily quiet, save for the distant thrum of engines. When the smoke clears, the count is 12 Bf-109s taken down in a matter of minutes. It is a staggering, almost unbelievable victory in the midst of a desperate war. The air is thick with smoke, and the echo of gunfire fades into the distance. The Spitfire, now momentarily out of danger, banks sharply to the left, avoiding a stray bullet from a distant Bf-109. Flight Lieutenant Robert Sinclair checks the instruments, his hands steady despite the chaos they've just endured. In the rear cockpit, Sergeant John Harris scans the skies one last time, his fingers still poised near the gun controls, a silent vigilance in his eyes. He looks out over the horizon. The once looming swarm of German aircraft has evaporated. The 12 Bf-109s, each a highly trained and dangerous fighter, now lie scattered in the sky and fields below, destroyed in a matter of minutes by a single gunner's precision and patience. Sinclair glances over his shoulder, his voice calm, but with a hint of disbelief. 12, Harris. 12. It's not just the kill count that has stunned them, it's the speed. What should have been a sustained, desperate air battle has turned into a one-sided slaughter. The Luftwaffe's assault, carefully coordinated and fiercely executed, has crumbled in the face of Harris's tactical brilliance. The psychological impact on the German pilots is profound. In an air war where victory often feels like a matter of inches, to lose 12 skilled pilots and aircraft in minutes is a blow that cannot be ignored. The radio crackles to life, and Harris's squadron leader, Wing Commander William Foster, comes through with a simple but powerful message. Well done, Harris. Return to base. The Luftwaffe's disbelief. Back on the German side, the loss is felt immediately. Luftwaffe pilots, trained to overwhelm the RAF with sheer numbers and power, had underestimated the ingenuity and resourcefulness of their adversaries. The news of the lost Bf-109 spreads quickly through the German ranks. They had come to expect easy victories, having outclassed the RAF in earlier engagements. Now, in a single, well-executed counterattack, they face a reality where their superiority is not so certain. In the aftermath of this engagement, the Luftwaffe pilots struggled to understand what went wrong. The British had always been resilient, but this was something new. It wasn't just the British pilots they were facing. It was a gunner whose tactical thinking had turned the tide of the battle. The RAF's counterattack with such efficiency forces the Luftwaffe to reconsider their approach to the Battle of Britain. They can no longer rely solely on numbers. They must adapt to a new, unpredictable enemy. For the Luftwaffe High Command, the attack on the 12 Bf-109s is a wake-up call. Their plans to destroy the RAF's fighter defenses are no longer as certain. Their losses on that day are substantial, not just in terms of aircraft, but in the morale of their pilots and the confidence in their superiority. The RAF's strategic shift. On the British side, the attack on the 12 Bf-109s is seen as a remarkable victory, a testament to the RAF's evolving strategy. The success of the engagement highlights the importance of both individual skill and teamwork. The ability of Harris and Sinclair to work together, each complementing the other's strengths, reflects the broader shift in RAF tactics during the Battle of Britain. The British are beginning to understand that the way to win this war is not through raw power alone, but through coordination, creativity, and superior tactics. The RAF's leadership, initially skeptical about the effectiveness of gunners positioned behind the pilot, now sees the value of gunnery as a critical asset. Harris's success is a clear signal that the RAF's fighters, with their capable gunners, are more than capable of taking on the Luftwaffe's most formidable aircraft. The message is clear. Despite being outnumbered, the RAF has the tactical advantage, and now, more than ever, it will fight for every inch of airspace above Britain. As news of the victory spreads through the ranks, morale in the RAF soars. It is a moment of validation for Harris and countless other gunners who had trained for years in the hopes of making just such an impact. It's a victory not just in the air, but in the hearts and minds of the men who fought to defend Britain. In the hours following the attack, the RAF continues its operations, but the battle has shifted. The skies above Britain are still filled with the rumble of engines, but there's a change in the air. For the Luftwaffe, the loss of 12 Bf-109s in such a short span is a devastating blow. The German pilots, many of whom had never before faced such a swift and overwhelming counterattack, are left questioning their tactics. The Battle of Britain is not just a battle of machines, it is a battle of minds, and for the first time, the Luftwaffe has encountered a challenge they hadn't anticipated. On the ground, British leaders take stock of the situation. The victory does not immediately alter the course of the war, but it serves as a powerful reminder that the RAF, despite being outnumbered, has the ability to turn the tide of battle. The Royal Air Force's defiance, bolstered by moments of brilliance like Harris's attack, provides a much-needed boost to British morale. The war is far from won, but the Battle of Britain has shown the world that the British will fight to the last. For Sergeant John Harris, however, the victory is bittersweet. He has done his job, and done it well, but he is also acutely aware of the cost of war. The 12 Bf-109s he destroyed represent not just enemy aircraft, but the lives of skilled pilots, men who had families, homes, and dreams of their own. Harris, like so many soldiers, struggles with the moral complexities of war. He did not take joy in the destruction, but in that moment, he knew that his actions had played a part in saving countless lives on the ground. The damage caused to the Luftwaffe is undeniable. It's not just the physical loss of aircraft, but the psychological impact that reverberates through the German ranks. For the first time in the Battle of Britain, the Luftwaffe begins to feel the weight of British resilience. The attacks from the RAF have been sporadic, but they are now becoming more frequent, more coordinated, and more effective. The Germans can no longer count on overwhelming superiority. They will need to rethink their strategy if they hope to break the British will to resist. The RAF's growing confidence. On the British side, the ramifications of Harris's strike are immediate. The RAF now understands that the key to victory lies not just in the quantity of aircraft, but in the quality of their pilots and gunners. Harris's actions highlight the importance of training, precision, and tactical intelligence. It's not enough to be a good shot. It takes a deep understanding of the battle, the enemy, and the aircraft at one's disposal. As a result, British commanders begin to refocus their efforts on honing these very qualities in their pilots and gunners. The victory also sends a message to the British public. After weeks of relentless German bombings, morale had begun to dip. But Harris's victory, as it is broadcast across the country, becomes a symbol of hope. The Spitfires, once thought of as fragile defenders of a dying nation, are now seen as the epitome of British strength and ingenuity. The very aircraft that had been at the heart of Britain's defenses are now the symbol of their resolve. The victory on that day is also a testament to the growing effectiveness of British air defense strategies. The Battle of Britain was, in many ways, the first major air war where technology, like radar, was used to its full advantage. The radar systems allowed the RAF to anticipate Luftwaffe movements, enabling them to set traps and create counterattacks. Harris's victory underscores this shift in British strategy, showing that the RAF's technological edge is not limited to just radar, but extends to the tactical skill of its pilots and gunners. In the weeks that followed, the Battle of Britain intensified. The Luftwaffe, still reeling from their unexpected losses, continued their relentless assaults on Britain's defenses, but their momentum had been slowed. The loss of 12 Bf-109s in such a short period had sent ripples through the German command. Their once confident air superiority had been challenged, and they began to reassess their tactics. No longer could they rely on overwhelming numbers alone. The RAF's ability to adapt, innovate, and strike back had proven itself in the most dramatic fashion. The Luftwaffe's shift in strategy came at a critical time. British radar and communication systems were improving, allowing the RAF to better coordinate their responses to Luftwaffe raids. But it wasn't just the technology that was making the difference. It was the quality of the men in the air. The growing number of skilled pilots and gunners in the RAF proved that the key to victory wasn't just advanced technology, but the human element. Harris's victory had reaffirmed this truth. For the RAF, the psychological shift was profound. The battle was no longer about survival. It was about taking the fight to the Luftwaffe. The attack on 12 Bf-109s wasn't just a victory for one pilot or one gunner. It was a victory for the entire British defense effort. The airmen in the RAF, even as they faced immense danger, began to see themselves not as the underdogs but as capable, resilient fighters. Harris's actions were an embodiment of the RAF's philosophy, a philosophy rooted in agility, adaptability, and the resolve to never surrender. The global impact, a turning point in the war. The consequences of Harris's strike were felt not only in the skies over Britain, but across the globe. While the Battle of Britain had already become a symbol of resistance, the RAF's ability to hold their ground against the Luftwaffe had a profound impact on the war's trajectory. The victory wasn't just a tactical win, it was a strategic one. It marked the first time that Nazi Germany had faced significant resistance in the air. And in a war defined by its technological innovations and the scale of its battles, the Battle of Britain stood as a testament to the importance of human spirit, skill, and ingenuity. The victory in the skies over Britain did more than just protect the British Isles. It had global ramifications. For one, it ensured that the Nazi invasion of Britain, which many had feared was inevitable, would never come to pass. The defeat of the Luftwaffe forced Hitler to abandon his plans for Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain. Without a foothold in Britain, the German war machine would find it impossible to launch a successful invasion of Western Europe. More than that, the victory in the Battle of Britain also sent a message to the Allies. The RAF's resilience, showcased by events like Harris's destruction of 12 Bf-109s, demonstrated that Nazi Germany could be defeated. This revelation boosted morale not only in Britain, but in occupied countries across Europe. It encouraged resistance movements and bolstered the resolve of the Allied forces, who would soon be preparing for their own major offensives. As the war continued, the RAF's success in the Battle of Britain would become a rallying cry for resistance. The events of 1940, including Harris's decisive action, laid the foundation for the eventual liberation of Europe. While the Allies had much more to accomplish, the RAF's success in 1940 proved that the Axis could be stopped and, ultimately, defeated. Harris's legacy. In the decades following the war, Sergeant John Harris would be remembered not just for his technical skill, but for his role in shaping the outcome of one of history's most pivotal conflicts. While he was one of many unsung heroes of the Battle of Britain, his actions on that fateful day would cement his place in history. His victory over 12 Bf-109s, achieved with tactical brilliance and calm under fire, would remain a symbol of the RAF's ingenuity and determination. Harris, like many veterans, would return to civilian life after the war, but the war never truly left him. The emotional weight of combat, of taking lives, even in the service of a greater cause, stayed with him long after the victory was won. In interviews later in life, Harris would speak modestly of his actions, deflecting attention away from himself and focusing on the team effort that defined the RAF's victory. But for those who fought alongside him, there would be no forgetting the quiet, steadfast gunnery sergeant who, in the midst of a seemingly impossible situation, turned the tide of battle. The destruction of 12 Bf-109s in minutes wasn't just a victory in the air, it was a victory for the human spirit, a testament to the resilience and brilliance that defined the Battle of Britain and, ultimately, the defeat of Nazi Germany. The Battle of Britain stands as a testament not only to technological innovation, but to the quiet courage of those who fought in the skies above. The RAF's resilience in the face of overwhelming odds, symbolized by moments like Sergeant John Harris's destruction of 12 Bf-109s in minutes, marked a turning point in World War II. In that brief moment, as the Bf-109s fell from the sky, the fate of the British Isles, and perhaps the entire war, was altered forever. But beyond the tactics and the kills, there is a deeper truth in these events. Harris's success wasn't simply the result of superior machines or a fluke of fate. It was a result of human ingenuity, of individuals pushing the limits of what was thought possible. His calm under pressure, his understanding of the air war as both a science and an art, and his ability to make split-second decisions were all reflections of the very human qualities that, in the end, made the difference in World War II. What Harris achieved that day was not just a victory for the RAF or for Britain. It was a victory for the very idea of resistance. In the face of a powerful adversary, where victory seemed impossible, the RAF proved that courage, strategy, and the will to fight could overcome even the greatest of challenges. It was a lesson that echoed across the world, reminding those who resisted the Axis powers that they were not alone, that they, too, could change the course of history. And perhaps, in the end, that is the true legacy of the Battle of Britain, not just the aircraft that soared through the skies or the tactics that defined the dogfights, but the men and women who, in the face of certain defeat, fought not only for survival, but for the very future of humanity. Sergeant John Harris, like so many others, never sought fame or recognition. But his moment in history is a reminder that sometimes, in the midst of war, brilliance can emerge from the most unexpected places. It is this quiet genius, this unwavering resolve, that has shaped the course of our past, and continues to inspire those who look back on this pivotal chapter of history.